Alright, welcome to Random Guitar Duels. This is the top 5 finalists, and this is a huge matchup between Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads. So what I'm going to do is just give a few points, and you guys go vote in the poll below to decide which one of these two moves on to the very top list in this knockout round between two titans. So let's start off with Eddie Van Halen. He was an innovator as much as he was an artist. He was as great from a technical and engineering point of view on both the guitar, keyboards, and in fact on his studio presence as a contributor to the production on Van Halen albums. And for that, he deserves a huge amount of credit. I don't know if there is another guitar player like that in rock and roll. There is Les Paul. Eddie's the only one in rock or metal that has the same dual capacity as a technician, meaning a guitar technician, and a technical master, meaning a guitar player. And so he was able to devise instruments for himself that were crafted specifically for certain sounds, for certain tracks, and of course he had his famous guitars that were signature sound and look. The second thing about him is, of course, his tapping technique, which he popularized and spread through the 80s just to every single guitar player that wanted to play in rock music, at least dabbled in it. And for that reason, that's the reason he's most widely known, but it kind of overshadows a lot of the other really interesting things about him. And my third point would be that he was a great songwriter, and this primarily applies to the guitar, but it also applies to the keyboard. And because of his tapping technique, he really blended keyboard playing and guitar playing in an unusual way that's more usual now, but it was completely innovative when he did it at the time. And this fusion of techniques with the fingers, with this actual physical playing, also extended to the musicianship and the songwriting. So when he wrote a song on the guitar, he could think in terms of how a classical composer or a keyboard player would play. And when he writes on a keyboard, he can think in riffs like a guitar player, and that makes him very unusual indeed. For Randy Rhoads, he only has 2 albums to let us see what he was really all about in his ascent toward his prime. I don't want to call it his prime, because you can definitely believe, listening to Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, that he hadn't reached his peak yet, that those were just signals of where he was yet to go. And clearly one of the ways he would have expanded is into his songwriting. So something like Revelation Mother Earth really shows you where he could have gone, say if Ozzy wanted to do another extended song or even a concept album, but we'll never know. With this actual playing, of course, the first element is how well he blended classical music with heavy metal, and he did this with a lot of joy, but he also did this with an impeccable touch and smoothness of playing that few players ever accomplished in any genre. So let's put that up at the top. His polish, his technique, his hands on the guitar are just a joy to experience and listen to. The second thing is he has a combination of aggressiveness and reflection in his playing. So the songs are coming at you hard and heavy, but they display a lot of thought, a lot of imagination, and a lot of sensitivity to the musicians around him. And that brings me to my third point, where I think he's different from Van Halen and almost has an edge on him just in this one small respect, which is that he fits into a band. His guitar fits into the band sound a little bit better than Eddie. Eddie is the Van Halen sound, more or less. He's way up front in every mix, whether it's his keyboards or his guitar. It's just the dominant sound. In anything Van Halen does, the dominant sound is the guitar or the keyboards. With Randy and Ozzy, there's a full band with Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake and Oz. They make a unified sound. I'm not saying Van Halen didn't have a unified sound. I'm just saying that Randy's guitar fits into the mix just a little bit more snugly. It's not quite up in the front as Eddie's. And so for this reason, it gives the impression that he has a little bit more control. And I know being out of control was part of Eddie's, persona, but that control factor, that element of controlled chaos that Randy has is very interesting to me. So those are my 3 points on these two guitarists, but the important part is what you think. So vote in the poll below. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.